and welcome to the 8th Annual Getting Played Symposium on Equity in the Entertainment Industry and Awards, #Getting Played Symposium. Gay, 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 lesbian, lesbian, bisexual, non-binary to you, our friends joining us from Florida and across the country and globe for what will be an amazing conversation with extraordinary talent from music, stage, film, and more. I am founder of the Getting Played Symposia and your host, Kathleen Antonia Tarr, of caramel skin tones and brown hair pulled tightly back under a rather large black headset, dark blue floral print short sleeve blouse, and chunky ringed copper necklace. Special thanks to Stanford University sponsors, the Office of the Vice President for the Arts and Program in Writing and Rhetoric, as well as tech producer Devon Meyer, post-production Natalie Andreen, Black Laurel PR, ASL translators Dieckman and Juan Ramirez, and of course, our keynote, Tommy Soulati Shepherd, fresh off of his 2022 Grammy nomination, and panelists Rotimi Agbabiaka, Maria Giese, Cidney Hue, Naomi McDougall Jones, and Sean San José. With gratitude also to the Ohlone, the original stewards of the land I'm currently occupying here in the San Francisco Bay Area. In the interest of time, we will not be reading the bios of our speakers, so please visit the website. All participants' opinions are their own and do not represent their employers, affiliations, or Stanford University. And although this symposium is being recorded, it may be made available only in part after the event, so don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss anything. If you would like to view the ASL interpreter on a larger screen, we invite you to spotlight their video throughout the entire event. View the live transcript by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of the screen. This year's focus for the symposium is point of view, otherwise known as POV, how creators shape an audience's lens and how that lens impacts the society in which we live, including how we relate to each other. POV is known as the visual language of cinema itself, the details of shot design. But POV is not limited to film. We each have our own, of course, and in the world of entertainment, POV is how creators focus audience attention. It significantly impacts equity, inclusion, also alienation and objectification, and more, because it increases the viewer's emotional identification with the lens the creator curates. As a filmmaker, actor, writer, lawyer, and educator, I have witnessed the disparities in who obtains focus through curated POV and the subsequent harms, sometimes violent, whether the managing attorney, my boss at Legal Aid, who pushed me down on a couch at a staff party, demanding a sexual massage, the reason I stopped practicing law, or the career opportunities I preferred, robbed of me because of my female sex, flying for the Air Force, back when women weren't permitted to be combat pilots, and playing in the NFL, although I would later be drafted to the Women's American Football League before it was crushed by a bikini league. Yeah, don't get me started. Well, I have started, haven't I? So let's go down the road to athletics a little further. We know that women and girls receive far less attention in sports, even in the form of news entertainment. At the 2019 World Rowing and US Rowing Indoor Championships, I won my race to the announcer's praise as rowing royalty. This is me, arms raised in victory when I heard that announcement. Oh, you can't see me? Oh, then let me share a still from the broadcast when I was crossing the proverbial finish line. Yes, the cameraman found two men chatting it up to be more compelling. In fact, women on the row erg weren't in focus on camera until after the important men were finished, meaning faster women received no coverage at all, except in the background. Using the Are Men Talking Too Much online timer, highly recommend, from the moment that 2019 event coverage starts to the end of the PR2 and 3 men's and women's races, men appear on camera for 15 minutes compared to women's 1. When I, the very next month, walked away with 18 indoor rowing world records on the same day, this is how much coverage I received. Yeah. Including in the blog of the very company issuing the certificates. Dejected, I'm headed toward dragon boat racing and returning to the hammer toss, the latter of which, when I started training as the first female hammer thrower at UC Berkeley, it wasn't an Olympic event, or even world championship sport, and wouldn't be until the turn of this last century. This point of view that female athletes simply aren't significant is certainly the reason for this mess. The NC2A women's basketball weight room for last year's tournament, with one stationary bike, not pictured, yoga mats, and a weight pyramid that didn't go above 50 pounds. I squatted over 500 pounds in college, so what were these athletes supposed to do? Stack their teammates? Compare the men's. The NC2A quickly remedied the situation after blowback, but why should complaint have been required? Well, if one starts from the point of view that female athletes are lesser, weaker, then one acts in accordance, including at times with complete and entire disregard. And because Earth Day was yesterday, a quick shout out to my favorite planet. Love you, Earth. So sorry my species is slapping you senseless while we focus on Will Smith. But our collective POV seems to be that consumption, waste of resources, and appeal via capitalism to the average person rather than excellence. We seem to think these are essential. I don't know how to change that perspective. Wish that I could. What I may have better success changing is how alert audiences are to the ways creators shape our POV and the impact. I hope all of the Getting Played Symposia these past 8 years, with many more to come, inspire us to understand how important equity in the entertainment industry is. What we consume shapes how we treat each other, how we envision our future, and how we act now to make the world better. But don't just take my word for it. Let's hear from our experts, beginning with our keynote, Tommy Soulati Shepherd, an internationally renowned actor, playwright, composer, educator, rapper, drummer, beatboxer, and music producer. Take it away, Tommy.
Nice. Thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here with all of these folks. Yes, Tommy Soulati Shepherd, he, him, they. The Soulati comes from do, re, mi, fa, boom, boom, boom. I live in Alameda, California, raising a 14-year-old son with my wife, Ana Maria. I'm wearing a multicolored, lined, and polka dots, like in living color-esque button-down shirt, a black blazer, and a black hat with a button on it that says, "You are on native land." I'm in downtown LA at the moment, and the native land I'm on is of the Tongva people, and just want to acknowledge that they are still here. You have to act as if it were so possible to radically transform the world, believing in it just enough every day to keep going, doing it all the time, doing it down the line, meeting of hearts and minds where the ebb's flowing, away from the folks that can put you in a bind like they ain't never seen your kind, but they knowing they just want to try us all on for size, and it's no surprise when they set us off to the side, keep us two-stepping before the electric slide. We stay warm because don't nobody like cold fries. Let me place the setting, it's up for time. No leftovers for later. This food for thought got me thinking I should whip them up a plate of some envy greens mixed in a fierce salad, a privileged shake sprinkled with need to mass manage. Some get to apologize for the things they've done. Others get stopped at risk and then some. Yeah, leaving us wondering what could we accomplish? Who are the real folks? Who's the accomplice? And really not holding our breath. We got options. We got strike up. We got caution and time, which can get cut short at any time. We beat clocks, illuminate, ignore signs. You have to know that you're visible in my eye. And I don't really care how divisible individuals get. And you are a miracle in my eye. Because we are not invincible, still strong principles in our materials. I'll tell you why. Our life is critical. This race is winnable. It ain't no theory, it's just that light. We move like light, the speed of light. We move like. We know the words, we know them. We wrote the song. We brought the love to carry on. We know the truth, we know it. It can't be wrong. Two-step and moving for this life now. Will you come along? Yeah. Two-stepping, two-stepping, yeah. Keep stepping, come on. Keep stepping, come on. Take it back to the people, yeah. Keep stepping, come on. Keep stepping, come on. Build it up for the children, yeah. Keep stepping, yeah. Because we brought the love to carry on. We got the words, we wrote the song. We know the truth can't be wrong. We got the bond, it makes us strong. We can't go wrong. when we're singing that song. La 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 la. Moving for this life now, slide. So this song is called Slide. It was written from a place of celebration, the place of the backyard boogie, and intentionally given that electric slide dance vibe, that line dance vibe. There are images in it that are beautiful and some that are kind of ugly. All of them are true. Now, in our country, and I'll keep it at just this country because we know it's global, but in this United States, most people's point of view of Black people is skewed, and they are admittedly resistant to pivoting in any way about it. This is how it is possible for the folks who tried to stop young Ruby from going to school in 1957 to be so defiantly against their grandchildren learning about them trying to stop young Ruby from going to school in 1957. One example of how critical things are. You know, I remember back in the day when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore, but I would pray sometimes for someone white to really get it and say something. Now, that's not something you should be wasting your time praying to God about. But, I had a real problem with people just sitting back watching my people be traumatized at the least or eliminated at the most. I didn't understand it. How could you not stand up for someone that needs you to speak up on their behalf? That question led me to ask myself, who are you standing up for? Hmm? Who else needs me to stand up for them? I began to see how valuable it was for other people to see someone going in for someone else that doesn't look like them. It brought up questions surrounding equity, identity, race, and definitely brought many questions up about white supremacy. So I want to tell you the origin story of a crew I'm with. Alphabet Rockers, aka AR Crew, aka AR Plus, aka The Future. When we started out in 2007, most schools and venues had a point of view on hip hop that made them ask us, is your music appropriate for kids? Completely forgot that we are a children's music group. Are there any cuss words? All kinds of questions like that. Now, we had the same kind of issues with our genre of music. We had a hard time being respected as children's musicians because, one, hip hop, two, we were speaking on real kids' experiences, which had nothing to do with slides and banana splits and that such, but them being racially bullied or just plain old bullied on the playground. And three, we were educational musicians. And that to many people was like, that's not going to work. Anyway, so we didn't listen to them, of course, and we got into the classroom and we were talking about numbers, letters, and shapes, and all from a hip hop point of view. And then throughout the next 7 years or so, we embodied and incorporated hip hop aesthetics into our curriculum. And we were able to tap into like this culture that myself and the other AR co-founder, Caitlin McGaw, was part of. We're part of the hip hop culture. So we use these elements as tools for the message. For example, we introduced the element of the cipher. We circled up and connected that circle to community. We started to understand that there was more to learn about than just shapes and letters, showing kindness to animals and good manners. So 2015, our point of view shifted and we pivoted from the classroom to the playground. My son is 14 now, but Caitlin and I were witnessing his experiences of injustice since preschool. So it was crystal clear that we had to find ways to amplify these narratives, especially when there were people out there in denial that such injustices occurred. So one day at a performance, it's a fun story. I was in the middle of a verse, just like pouring my heart out, right? And a little girl tapped me and she asked, why are your lips brown? And, and I looked at her like, give me a second. I'm working here, kid. She got that and backed off. But I mean, as soon as the song was over, hey, why are your lips brown? And I was thinking on my toes when I answered, because I'm brown. And then I thought about it for a sec and I realized that that was the right answer, you know? And then her little brother, who was clearly not black, asked, "Is my skin brown?" And Caitlin asked him, "Well, what do you see?" And he looked at his hand and he confirmed, "Yep, he's brown." So we took a picture together, and this kid was so perplexed because he could see both he and I next to each other in the pic, and we were blaringly not the same. What we were slow to catch on to, Caitlin and I, was the little boy asked that question because he looked at me and he felt like we were the same. He didn't get it so much that he started like wiping his face, saying like, I must have had like dust on my face. Man, we were cracking up. So from his point of view, we were the same. We wound up writing a song loosely based about it called "Give Me Some Skin," which was like a myth telling us how all skin colors started off brown and everyone has brown in their skin. We also encourage people to not label people by using colors in the crayon box to describe themselves or others. We also not just noticed, but young people were literally telling us that some kids were being excluded and not treated fairly on the playground and at school. We address those situations with songs like Oddball, telling the weird kid, which I consider myself to be back in the day, that different is okay. As a matter of fact, it's cool. I'm here to tell you. That's Your Name, Wear It Out was for all the kids who have to suffer everyone else saying their name incorrectly because they won't take the time to learn the pronunciation. And then around 2016, we took another pivot from the playground to the neighborhood, the community. We began drawing on our community needs when it came to what music they wanted to hear and what content they would like to hear in it. That led us to writing the Grammy nominated album Rise, Shine, Woke. Our people were asking questions like, how do I talk to my 6-year-old black boy about what he's about to experience? How do I tell him there will be a day where he stops being cute and will become a threat? Other questions like, how do I get my little girl to take the confidence that she has at home out into the world with her and to school? Questions like, why do people always have to ask me, what are you? Now, we did write a song called What Are You, which is basically that. And we told them, when they ask you what you are, you just tell them, just respond, I'm a star. That's what you got. That's what they get, you know? And the other song we made, I'm Proud. Uh, well, I mean, we don't have to tell you what that's about. And then there was a song, Questions, and that confronts like identity and heritage uh, and what that is all about. And then there's a song called Shine, which is about loving your beautiful brown skin and telling it to the world. Now, throughout the tour for this album, we noticed a lot of resistance in some communities we would go to. I would say in some places, but it was lots of places. There was a real, this isn't about me type of attitude, along with the old, I don't want to shatter my children's innocence. Hmm. My child doesn't need to know about that yet. They should just be a kid. My question to them was, my kid is living it, but your kid doesn't need to know about it. If your white kid doesn't know that they get treated differently than my black kid, and they sit back and watch it happen with no response, then they don't get to play together. That led us to this question. How do you get someone who knows they get treated better than you to speak up about that? The community was also telling us it was about more than race. It was also about gender. It was about identity. So we asked, what about it do you want the world to know? What things need not be said? What messages need to be put out there? What is the best said? What is best said by you and not us? That time of inquiry brought us to writing our second Grammy nominated album. It's called The Love, and it's all about gender justice. Now, being a cisgendered male, I had work to do, and yeah, I did it. Work in progress. I had to work on myself first because there's a lot of things about the queer community that I needed to learn. And there was so much that I wasn't aware of, and injustices were committed in resistance to the community just being. And the more I learned from the community, the more I wanted to step up, speak out. And furthermore, I'm like, I have a mic and I know how to turn it on. So you say whatever you want and I'll turn it up for you. Now, what we have learned And now make it a practice is to just ask questions. Let questions lead to more questions. To us, it's not about the answers, it's the quest that encourages us to create. Asking questions have allowed us to keep our point of view on a swivel. More understanding is available in the pivot, you know? And I'll close by saying this. I don't need to walk in anybody's shoes, but I can definitely try to see where you are coming from while you walk in them. I don't wish these shoes on anybody, but if you can understand the way I see things in relation to the way you see it, there's room there for something. There's an opportunity for future dream building. In my personal life and with Alphabet Rockers, we are continuously shifting our point of view and pivoting towards liberation. And I leave you with this question. You coming? Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness. So exquisite. Ah, there's so much to think about. I took so many notes while you were speaking. It's going to be impossible for me to ask you every question after that. I'm going to bring our other panelists on because I know you're going to stay. Thank you, Tommy. But thank you again for that exquisite keynote. Let's bring everybody on screen for the panel discussion. Thank you, Devon. As your moderator, again, I'm going to be using the bell hooks rules of engagement. So I want clear, succinct responses. I will cut you off if you're going on too long. You can actually turn that around on me too and give me the signal if I go on too long. But before we begin with Sean, actually, I have I need to tell you before Tommy, I get into the questions that I have to. I'll come back to them, but I want to make sure that you saw the audience reaction. So much love, Tommy. Thank you. Amen. There's a lot for you. That was just incredible. All right, while I simmer on that wisdom. All right, I'm going to move to our next very wise and extraordinarily talented panelist today, Sean San José, who is co-founder of Camposanto and recently appointed artistic director of the Magic Theater in San Francisco. It is so good to see you. Tell me a little bit about how do you curate point of view through artistic direction?
Hey, Kathleen, I just have to say, first of all, thank you for making this whole forum happen. And then hearing your opening, man, it really fucked me up. Like, I've known you for a long time, and I've been impacted by your integrity and your art and just your positive energy. And it's just, I'm continually amazed by the superhero power that human beings have, to know that you walking around with all that shit, and that's not always what you lead with. So, you know, I say more power to you and thank you. And I have to say also, big ups and super props to my brother, Tommy. That was amazing, man. This is when we're supposed to be in the room live together, so you could hear us go, "Err." It was beautiful. Thank you. My name is Sean San José. I don't want to get the bell hook. My name is Sean San José. My preferred pronouns are any and all. Any and all that make you feel comfortable make me feel real comfortable. I'm wearing a kind of a clean fucking hat. I have glasses on. I think they're called, Rotimi, help me out here. I think they're called tortoiseshell, darling. And I have the beautiful John Coltrane, the Divine t-shirt on with the gold trim and the black joint. And I have the beautiful capiche shells in the background from my Lola. So, you know, the whole shot that you're saying, Kathleen, is everything. That's what that, you know, I think we use different terminology. I use either viewfinder or gaze, Gaze, Rotimi. And so, which is to say that I'm not interested in fucking with the white gaze. Usually when I say gaze, Gaze, and I think it's about centering, and the term that we use is rightful centering. I think people get real scary when you say things like, you know, the othered are going to be centered, or this is a space where we're telling from our viewpoint of people of color, or we're children of immigrants, or we're poor people, or, you know, we queer, or we trans, we're, you know, and then everyone else that is so-called normalized gets all fucked up and scary, and it's like, oh, then I'm not included, which is to say, like, the viewfinder, it doesn't invert for most folks. You know what I mean? Like, we're introduced to everything, education, media, fucking marketing, through one singular viewfinder that is housed in the pyramid of white supremacist thinking and structure. And you can be like, whatever, Sean, why you got to leap there? Because it's true. That's foundationally where it is. And so when I say rightful centering, that just means like, this is where, you know, this is our ancestry, this is our lineage, this is what my grandma worked so fucking hard to get us here to, and so I'm going to take that space and let it reflect and respond to the world from that viewfinder, and it just tells a more honest and true position. But I think it ends up ultimately allowing us to see each other in the world more fully. I think any time that we inhibit or go through someone else's viewfinder, it fucks up the truth. And if we, the work that I do is about live communing first. So to do storytelling live in order to elicit thought, and in the hope that we could create a dialogue that happens out of that, and out of that dialogue, hopefully someone can seed some action, and one day the action can be actualized and ignited. So I do see us on the long shaft of the spear in there. And it's all necessary because we have to start somewhere, especially for those of us that don't have microphones or lights or the circle to stand in. And so I say all of that before I get the bell hooks hooked to say that point of view is everything. It has to be, for me, it has to be foundational. Again, I do live community, storytelling. So like the art part, like off top, it's just going to be dope. It's going to be great. I only like to fuck with people that are super dope. I'm really excited that I live in the Bay and it's surrounded by amazing artistry. So if you have that off top, then what you going to do with it? Like, what are you going to do with that potential and power? Well, I'm interested in us acknowledging how much has happened to bring us to this place. And then how do we take it forward? It was so enlightening to hear Tommy talk about the progressions of starting from a righteous and really exciting place of creativity and integrity, and then it continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. And part of it is visibility, and a lot of it is amplification. And in the Bay Area, for me, a lot of it is like, it's about security. And when I mean security, is like, look, these fucking conservative nutjob fake Christian motherfuckers are coming into our cities. And I say our cities because we are immigrant people, we are port city people, we are stewards of a land that isn't ours, and we are trying to acknowledge ghost spirits and memories here. And they're trying to come in here and paint everything like a fake gray and put white buses with only white types of people with fake technology that is supposed to be about the future, but it's not about the future. It's a different way of boxing us in. And I'm saying, I'm not here for that. And I'm not a soldier, and I'm not a fighter in that regard, but I am fiercely going to hold on to our stories and acknowledge our spirits, memories, and ghosts. It's who we are, and it's what this land speaks to. And I'll just say very briefly to land, in terms of land acknowledgement. I didn't say land acknowledgement. I'm a believer in, of course, acknowledging that we're on stolen land, which in these theater things we say unceded, which is like the tricky way to not say stolen so we don't feel bad or something. I'm unsure about that. But I say that to say that anytime we do a land acknowledgement, I would ask us to take a second step. A good friend of Rotimi's and mine, Idris Cooper Anifuashe, hit me to this, is look up land trusts in your area. Just go land trusts. Who are the native land trust holders? And there's a way you could pay your fucking taxes on that. The way you pay your fucking taxes on other stuff that you pay for. And that's, to me, I'm all about that action, you know. I like to talk and do storytelling, but if we're going to say, like, this land is this, that, and the other, all praises too. I'm not saying that in a fake way, but look up that land trust real quick, people, and then do, you know, pay off top. That, you know, that's one clean way of saying, thank you. This is not my shit, and I appreciate you letting us build on your shit.
I love that, Sean, so much. I love that. I'm definitely going to be looking that up. And I know that's right from the audience. So I just want you to to hear that coming back at you. And you actually did give me a lot to think about. I'm the descendant of a lot of folks in the U.S., from indigenous to enslaved Africans to colonists, and I may eventually have a share of my colonist estate, and I've been thinking very much of how to get that back in the hands of the indigenous populations that it was taken from. So I appreciate that so much. And oh my gosh, there's so much wisdom here, and I am just. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to read all my notes after all this. I want to also give Sean a shout out, because Sean was actually interviewed in my feature documentary, Getting Played, Who's Playing You, which inspired this whole thing. It's from 2009. And because I was a fledgling filmmaker with rather poor production skills, I screwed up a lot of his audio. So there's not enough of him in my doc. But I want to give a big shout out, because that is actually part of what even got me to this stage, this symposium named after my documentary. So I appreciate that. All right, and next we have Naomi McDougall Jones, who is, I just feel so, my cup runneth over with this entire event today. As a storyteller and change maker, you wear so many hats, so it's impossible, I'm sure, for you to talk about all of them. We could do just a whole symposium just on your multiple hats. Your newest project, the scripted fiction podcast, The Light Ahead, which is particularly dear to my heart, as you know, because not only was I privileged to be one of the writers, but also, it's about caring for the planet, which means so much to me. So, but I'm very curious with podcasts in particular, how do you shape POV there?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kathleen. It's a privileged group to be part of. I'm Naomi McDougall Jones. I she, her pronouns. I have red hair. I'm wearing a little black sweater and blue shirt. And I'm on the traditional Shoshone-Bannock lands, and I will look up the land trust thing. So I've only show run one podcast, and it was the one you just referenced, Kathleen, called The Light Ahead, which I had the privilege of hiring both Kathleen and Cidney to write and direct on. And it was a collaboration between the Next Economy movement and sort of those of us on the Hollywood screenwriting side of things. And so we paired, actually, in the end, 13 Next Economy activists, social justice activists, those who are working for a more beautiful future, with 13 Hollywood screenwriters. And we gave them the task of trying to answer the question, what would 2030 look like if the US had an economy that truly worked and cared for everyone? And so each activist and screenwriting pair was tasked with dreaming up a version of 2030, and we based the parameters were, okay, go dream big. Like, if you could have absolutely anything, if everybody in the world, in the US, dropped what they were doing right now and said, this activist has the right idea, let's build their dream, what would 2030 look like? And among both the activists and the writers, we had truly diverse perspectives, centered sort of in the opposite direction of normal. I don't think we had a white cis man involved, maybe one on the activist side, but it was the voices that have been historically left out of the narrative. And it was so beautiful to get to dream in that space together, and also so interesting in how difficult the exercise proved to be for so many of us, that we'd say, okay, anything in 2030, like what is, and the exercise was, what does day-to-day life look like? So not just from a policy level, not from a theory level, but as told in story, what does the lives of a set of people look like in this 2030? And it was really hard because we're so caught in what is, and so many of the activists commented us, we spend every day fighting for change. And yet nobody has ever asked us this question of like, okay, in detail, imagine what we're fighting for. And many of the activists and organizations actually began adopting this exercise into a yearly plan, because they said we should be doing this every year. Every year we should take a week and ask ourselves, what are we actually fighting for? And so many times we'd get a first draft of the script yet back, and it would be sort of like the world as it is with like a couple of things fixed, a couple of things better, and the rest caught in the status quo, and we'd send them back. We'd be like, no, anything. You can have anything. There are no boundaries. And often it would take 2 or 3 drafts for us too to even just be able to imagine what a world outside of white supremacy and patriarchy could look like. And it was such a pivotal moment for me to recognize, like, we spend so little time on the exercise of just that imagination, and how can we possibly build it without the dream of what it could be, and the details of what it could be. So I think for the feedback we got was that for people involved, that was a really transformational experience, as I found it to be too. And I think something I've thought a lot about since then is that was such an overt exercise in that, it's about the future, it's about crafting the future, but we have to do that every time we tell a story. Every time we tell a story, and particularly a fiction story, we are crafting the details of a world that isn't real anyway. And so why not start fixing things in those fictional worlds now? Why not help us every time we see a story start to imagine the details of what could that be like? What could be different now? And what was also striking is of the stories, and you can listen to this podcast, it's on all the podcast platforms, it's called The Light Ahead. So many times with the realization was also, once you imagined it, you're like, oh, that's not that hard. Like, we could do that now, that it starts bringing that future into greater possibility in the present. So that's what I would share.
Thank you so much for that, Naomi. And it was an incredible experience to work on The Light Ahead as a writer. And I definitely am one of the people who I cannot imagine how we get to that better future without great tragedy among us as a species, just because of how much that is our history since the Stone Age and all these other things. But I absolutely agree. I enjoyed being forced to rewrite that vision and to really think about what are the positive inroads to that future we want. So thank you so much, Naomi, for that opportunity and for sharing. Thank you. We're going to get back, obviously, to more questions to you, of course. But next, I want to introduce Cidney Hue, who also does so much, and as Naomi said, was one of the writers as well, and you do all of that so well in addition. Particularly, I want to ask you about how you intentionally shape point of view through film directing, noting particularly that you focus on building inclusive futures through science fiction. So how does that play out for you?
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I'll just do this real quick. I'm Cidney Hue, pronouns are she, her. I'm a sci-fi director in New York City, the traditional lands of the Lenape people. And I look like a person from the future, I hope. I have teal hair, wearing a teal blazer with a neon yellow green turtleneck against a spaceship, a futuristic spaceship background. So I think I'll answer that in 2 parts. Naomi did such a good job talking about the future that there's not much for me to expand on, but for me, science fiction has always been such an incredible genre for actually shaping our future. Like Naomi said, if you put those ideas out there and people connect and relate to them, like storytelling, narratives, it shapes everyone's worldview. It shapes how they feel day to day about their own lives. It shapes how feeling of being less alone in the world. There's so much you can do when you can connect to someone through storytelling, and science fiction storytelling is about kind of creating that world, at least for me, so that I can see it. And like Naomi has mentioned too, so I can see it, and then we can all kind of build towards it and realize like, oh yeah, this is possible. Let's work towards that, because that's a future that I believe in. That's a world I want to live in. And so you asked about film directing, and I think for me, film directing, especially in feature films where you are the lead creative on deciding what is put on the screen, I try to make very conscious choices, especially in casting, because I think that's sort of the biggest impact you can have on what goes on the screen and how people can validate and see their own experiences on the screen. I try to be open-minded to who can play that part. And I'm sure I have my own sort of intrinsic biases, but when in the casting process, there's always kind of an idea in my mind, because I'm a visual thinker, of what I like the character to be. But I find time and time again, when someone walks into a room and they give their own take on that character, on that world, on that story, I'm always so taken and surprised, and I see all the possibilities from their vantage point, and it's just such a fun creative process. And all of us here, we're all artists, so we're all therefore by nature collaborators, and I'm sure you guys all have experienced like the beauty that comes from collaboration. Like, yes, you can create inside internally by yourself, but there is something magical that gotta happens between connection between each other, and there are new things that you could have never thought of because someone comes in with a really diverse perspective and shakes up your own world. So I think through collaboration, through all the different people with all of their different backgrounds and experiences, I try to bring in diverse creators who are better at things that I know nothing about, and also I'm not good at. So this way we can all balance each other out. We all bring something to the table. So behind the screen and in front of the camera, it's just very important to kind of seek out and be open to the different possibilities that everyone can bring in to your vision, your story.
Thank you so much, Cidney. Boy, I'm trying to figure out how I can make one question for all of you after everyone is done that I can just let you guys riff on, because I think I'm enjoying the riffing more than my focus questions. But thank you so much. All right, next, Maria, guys. First, I have to note that Maria is a 2016 Getting Played Equity Award recipient, as well as co-producer of the documentary Brainwashed: Sex, Camera, Power, which premiered at this year's Sundance Film Festival, which focuses on the visual language of oppression of women and girls. So brava. We are both interviewed in the film, and I have so many questions about your take on point of view. We've known each other for a while, but not only as a filmmaker, but how point of view is shaped by who is hired to direct a project, since you're the key player on us all paying more attention to the fact that women are so significantly underrepresented in as directors of Hollywood tentpole films.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm so honored. I just want to say really quickly, Tommy Shepherd, you are amazing. Thank you. Thank you for your beautiful song and your keynote. It was so great. So yes, I'm Maria Giese, and like Sean San José, any and all pronouns I'm good with. I'm here in Stonington, Connecticut, on the land of the Pequot, and which is an Algonquin tribe. Very, very honored to be on this land. Sean was saying, we need to have our own point of view. And that's really what the movie Brainwashed is about, that Kathleen is so brilliant in. And I might as well say Cidney Hue and Naomi McDougall Jones and I and Kathleen Tarr are so tied together from having gotten the ACLU investigation for women directors going, and then the 2015 federal investigation. And we are so proud of the work that we've done. It was a little obscured with Will Smith at the Academy Awards, but this was an incredibly historic year in which a woman won for Best Director. That was Jane Campion for Power of the Dog, and a woman-directed film won for Best Film for Sean Heder for Coda. And that is incredible that you have two women directors winning the two top awards for the first time in history in the Academy Awards. So point of view. When you watch a movie or a TV show or a commercial, you're looking at somebody, you're experiencing somebody else's point of view necessarily. And when we have 80% of entertainment media in the world, distributed around the world, is created in Hollywood, and 96% of those directors are men, and in television a little bit less. And since the investigations, the numbers have been moving a lot. But you really, the whole world is pretty much coming at watching our most influential form of entertainment media, from the point of view mostly of white men. And this is something that we need to change. The work that we did has resulted in two feature films, actually three. Amy Adrian's Half the Picture in 2018, and Tom Donahue's film, This Changes Everything. It's on Netflix, came out in 2019. It's a brilliant foundational film about the issue of women in Hollywood. And then the incredible film Brainwashed, Sex Camera Power by Nina Menkes, who's a genius, is all about that. It's about the objectification of women in our entertainment media and how they are fragmented, objectified, sexualized, and we see that through this really fundamental language of cinema. It's embedded in the very language of cinema. And it's a really important film to watch. It's going to be available, distributed this fall. And it had its world premiere at Sundance, and then international premiere at the Berlinale in February. And we're really proud of this film. So how women get hired, that's what you're asking, because if the point of view needs to be opened up to women and people of color equally, then we have to find ways to make sure that women get hired, and that's the problem. It's like 50% of people graduating from film schools are women and 50% are men. We have gender equality in our film schools because of Title IX. But when women move out of film school and into the professional playing field, we're dealing with Title VII, Equal Employment Opportunity Law, and that has been systemically violated in our industry. So that's really at the heart of the work that I've been doing and we've all been doing together, is to demand legislative change, to demand that our industry solves those systemic problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Want me to elucidate more on that?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely, and it tags on again with what Sean was saying about like really trying to get action, right? To getting actual action to happen, and what does that look like, and that sort of thing. So really just think about that. Thank you, Maria, so
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you.
And my new Stanford colleague, Rotimi Agbabiaka, brilliant, who performed from his award-winning solo show Typecast at the 2017 Getting Played Symposium. Rotimi, what are your thoughts? And again, you have so many talents, but what are your thoughts about shaping point of view through performance, particularly on stage?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Kathleen. It's thrilled to be here with such great company. So yeah, I'm Rotimi Agbabiaka. I answer to all pronouns. I'm zooming in from San Francisco, and I'm wearing a green sweater, and I'm against a wood panel background with a bookcase, so people can think I'm smart. I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a director, and a teacher. And to answer your question, Kathleen, I think I think the heart of good acting or good acting training is a focus on point of views, connection to your point of view. What are your unique impulses and thoughts? What's your history? What's your background? How do you feel about the world, and how do you express that in your art? I think one of the things that happens when you become part of the industry is that a lot of that begins to get stamped out of you by the demands of the way that performance is often managed and created, especially in the more commercial venues, and often you are expected to sort of fit into a box that comes with a prepackaged point of view, which is often based on stereotypes that you didn't create or that you don't necessarily live. And I think for me as a performer, one of the ways that I have tried to resist that and make space for other points of view is to create my own work. I think actors, especially performers, are often encouraged to think of themselves as not being the ones with the power in the room. They have to rely on someone else's permission to tell a story or to perform. And I think for me, while I was in school, I discovered solo performance and had the chance to write my own show. And that was incredibly empowering to me as an artist, and it showed me a venue to express my point of view, to share my voice, unfiltered, unmitigated. And so that's something that has continued to inform my career and really been such a wonderful venue for shifting point of view. I'm queer. I was born in Nigeria and migrated to this country. And then once I got here, I learned that I was Black. And so some of the many that have played in this position like an outsider, never typical. And so, oh, sorry, can you see?
Yeah, you're freezing a little
okay,
bit, but I think you came back. I think you came back.
That's what I'm always drawn to. What is the story that's not being told? What is the perspective that's not being told? What is the other thing that's not being said? And how can I, as a creator and a writer and a teacher, keep challenging the status quo, challenging the official story, wherever it's coming from, challenging all ideology? And so those are sort of the benchmarks that guide me in my quest to keep exploring, keep expanding the story. And then as a teacher, I try to encourage that in my students as well, to keep connecting to those impulses and to the parts of themselves that are outside of what's within the confines of allowed discourse.
Yeah, and your work is so brilliant. I mean, I know Sean and Tommy have seen it. It's just amazing. I mean, Stanford students are so lucky to have you. I hope they recognize how lucky they are to have you as an instructor who's to them. And yeah, just so incredible. There's so much again that I and in about 10 minutes I have to let the audience ask questions. So audience, get your questions ready. But I have many questions. I want to sort of go back to you, Tommy, a little bit and build on what you said, even just about asking more questions. But this is open to everyone. Tommy, I'll ask you to answer first. But what would you ask audiences, right? All the consumers of entertainment, what would you ask them to pay attention to when they're absorbing that entertainment?
I would ask them to find their connection to the message. We're definitely more than subliminally messaging to people. We try to be artistic about it, but sometimes we hit the nail over the head, and we just encourage folks to just find your connection to it, and engage that way. You don't gotta leap like we are, but you can find a way to take a step in the right direction. You don't gotta run with us, but maybe you'll catch up with us one day, and we'll be there, and we'll pull you in. But until then, get to stepping.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I love that. As audience are consuming, obviously I'm telling everybody to run out and consume all of these amazing talents' work. But as audiences are consuming maybe things that we think are a little more harmful as far as shaping point of view, I'm opening it up to others too. What do you think about how audiences should be consuming entertainment when there are these challenges of point of view? Like Maria, you talked about Brainwashed. The movie talks so much about that. And Naomi, I see you unmuting, please.
Yeah, I just think always being conscious that a story is being told from a point of view, because I think particularly with something like film, people don't really understand. Like they think the actors sort of made the movie, and like maybe they have a vague notion of what the director does, but that's not how it works. Like there are writers, directors, editors, producers with a very specific point of view telling you that story. And so just to have that filter and ask yourself, like, who is this person and what is their perspective? And to try to disentangle that rather than just receiving it through a hose, particularly as we're binging content now. Like we're not even sort of watching one thing and then digesting it and processing it. We're just sort of like, which makes it harder to keep your brain on and be actively aware. And then I would also just say, we're at this really crazy stage of vertical integration of media companies, particularly with film and television, where basically 5 corporations now decide what everybody watches. And because we've all been trained now to go to the streaming services, it's really hard to get audiences to pay for anything that isn't on one of the things they're already paying for. So what that means is that these 5 corporations and algorithms really are deciding what you watch, and every time you say, oh, I don't want to pay $2.99 to go see that, I don't you're limiting yourself to what those corporations want you to see. So to get out of that perspective, you do actually have to go pay for content that isn't on those platforms.
And I would just add to that maybe a sort of optimistic note that with the advent of the internet and the advent of iPhones, we really could possibly be at the threshold of an incredible democratization of our media and entertainment media if we can learn how to take hold of it, that anyone, anywhere in the world can create content from your own point of view and explore what your point of view is and what you want to see and what you want to share with people. So I think encouraging people to make their own media, and there is practically an infinite number of distribution platforms where you can put that out. So I think we need to take hold of make the revolution. Don't let those 5 corporations control all of our, entertainment media material that we see.
Yeah, kind of similar to what Maria and Naomi said. I would encourage audiences who once in a while, just like with every aspect of your life, like, your physical health, your mental health, nutrition, like if you care about what you eat, you should do the same for what you're ingesting in your mind, via media. So, like if you care about buying local or eating organically, then you should once in a while do an audit of the media that you're consuming. Like, is this, are these stories faithful to my beliefs and what I believe in? Are these the artists that I want to be supporting with my money and my time and attention? More important than anything, time is a finite resource. And so just to take me for an example, I consume a lot of science fiction media, and science fiction media is traditionally and still very much male dominated. And so I have to be very, very conscious and actually actively go out and seek media created by women and non-binary people or underrepresented people in the science fiction space, because those are harder to get to, because it's not like they don't have an easier pathway to your eyeballs. And so that's something that I know I have to put the work in, because I deeply care about the genre and I care about the media I consume in this space. And even just after a year of just taking an audit of the books that I have read in the science fiction canon and realizing like, oh my gosh, where are all the female authors? Like, where are the seminal women sci-fi works? And I just did, a year and a half, 2 years during the pandemic, just like reading up on all of that. And now that's all I consume, because I'm like, this is so good. I don't ever have to read anything else. I mean, of course I do, but just taking once in a while, just disrupting your routine and being like, let's do something like completely different than what I'm used to, and you might be surprised at what you find.
I love that, especially the idea of doing a self-audit of what you've been consuming. That is such a great idea, Cidney, to really think about that. I'm going to have to do that for myself. Clearly, I have a long list of tasks after this symposium that I'm looking forward to, but I think that's such a great idea. I'll have to think about what that means. Yeah, any other ideas around that anybody wants to share? Okay.
I mean, Kathleen, you used the word task, and I would kind of just try to reframe it, because task to me kind of sounds like a chore.
Yes.
Like it's a difficult thing. It's an errand I have to run.
Right.
And in reality, when it's something you really love, when it's passionate about, it doesn't have to be science fiction, whatever it is for you, I think you'll naturally find that you want to find that untapped talent, or you want to find that voice that you haven't heard in the spaces that you care about. So make it a thing of that you love first, I think, and then you can maybe trickle out from there.
No, thank you for that correction. Absolutely, yes. It is. It's an opportunity, and I find absolutely this interesting idea of just even seeing yourself better, because I think, Cidney, that's what you're offering as well, is that you can actually see who you are a little bit better, right? You put these pieces together of what you're consuming, and you actually get a better vision of even who you are as a person, which is really a glorious opportunity. So thank you for that. Naomi, please.
Well, I was just going to say off what Cidney said, that I was getting interviewed by this 15-year-old young woman of color the other day for like a high school project, something about parody in film, whatever. And she had the best questions I've ever been asked. And in the middle, she said, "How does not seeing more women of color directors' films affect you?" And I like took my breath. Nobody had ever asked, like I spend all this time talking about the statistics and everything. And I was like, it makes my life worse, because I lose out on those perspectives. I don't get to have my mind expanded and, see these worlds that I don't have access to. And so I think thinking of reframing it as that, like, you are actively losing out every day that you don't get to see these other perspectives. So go find them and go pay for them.
Absolutely. How do we, as you know, is there a way that we can encourage folks who may not be as insightful or eager as those of us here to do that work? How do we encourage that to happen within audiences? Tommy.
Baby steps. Like, honestly, like it sounds so simple and so like what it's quick like what we know that colloquialism, baby steps, but really it really is like do what you can. Don't do what overwhelms you. It's already overwhelming enough that you have to do something. So do what you can.
I like to approach things from a sort of top-down legislative approach. So I think, demanding oversight of these distribution channels, of the streamers and the studios, and that to make sure that Black and brown and non-binary and female voices are included in accordance with demographics. I'm all in favor of that.
I just want to piggyback off what Rotimi brought up earlier that I thought was just so astute of like, don't wait for permission, because I think that's so important. And like Tommy said, like just taking baby steps, because I think now, artists, we are disruptors, and financiers, which money runs everything, especially in a big industry like Hollywood and entertainment, like they see what works and they just want to make more of that. And because for so long, it has been only a certain type of person that has been allowed to make that space and make those stories, and then say that, hey, it works, so let's keep making more of it. Oh, I don't know about you though, like I've never seen anything you make work, but because you were never given the chance. But now there are disruptors and artists who are going out there and just not waiting for permission, just telling their own story, and then they're connecting to audiences because of the tools that have been democratized, as Maria mentioned. And so I think like if you can just go out there and put yourself out there in the world, make the world that you want to see, and you might connect to an audience, and people will see that and they will say, hey, you have an audience, you're speaking truth with power, like there's something here. They'll probably try to monetize it in some way, but in that sense, you can then get to the gatekeepers.
To sort of go along the lines of what Cidney is saying, I think absolutely, yeah, don't wait for permission. And I think for us as performers or creators, I think treating the audience like they're your accomplice, right? I think many of us who are outsiders sometimes have this antagonistic idea of the audience, and maybe for some good reasons. But I think if you really trust that people are actually on your side, and treat them like they are, and I always, I think there's so much power in humor. You catch more flies with honey, they say. So I always think, like, remember that we're here on some level, or I think on many levels, to entertain, to bring delight and pleasure to people. And if that is at the forefront of your mission or your goal, I think that's part of how you reach people and get them on your side.
And for film, or for consumers of content, who might be going, oh, well, I don't want to do these tasks, right? I'm already overwhelmed with what to watch. Like now I have to go look over here. I think it's what I said before, like, imagine if you'd been only eating potatoes for your entire life and you didn't know that there was anything else. And you were just like, well, I think this is fine, I'm just going to stick with these potatoes. But then, like, imagine if you had broccoli or whatever, I don't know, Hershey's Kisses, something. Like there's all this other stuff available that you might actually really like. And I think, like I was saying, with the gorging, with the algorithms, like these media companies, their goal is to prevent you from ever turning off Netflix, right? Their goal is to get you hooked. What's going to get you hooked is not the content that's going to feed your soul, right? It's like this chemically induced stuff. And I think we have this feeling as consumers, as we gorge ourselves on this, that we're like, it's not quite doing what we're going, it's not filling the hole that we're like grabbing at it to fill. And so I think a potential answer is that there's soulful storytelling that's happening at the edges, but you have to leave the box of the streamers to get at it.
I wish I know because it's been years, right, that people have talked about trying to get audiences to go to see these other types of things and how difficult that is. Sean, now that you're at the Magic, are you thinking about how to, or just in general, do you think about how to get people who maybe wouldn't go to a certain production to encourage them to come, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I appreciate what everyone is saying. I love what you're saying, Maria, about the legislative, because we really do. I mean, we need to take the power, and yet there are only so many of us that are built for that. And I think of myself much more, at the door. So I think of it much more directly. How do you make an invitation? How do you make a welcoming? How do you make a home? Most of these places, for me, growing up in a city like this or growing up in the Bay even, they're all fucking classist, racist institutions. Like, no one fucking invited, my big ass family to come down to the symphony. You know what I mean? They didn't make no fucking opera that looked like Mission Street. You know what I'm saying? And so just on a basic level, and like whatever, that's your market. That's your market. But then when the worm turns and they're like, oh no, what the fuck do we do now? You know, and so I say all that to say is that once you first, I'll just say this, Kathleen. I feel like I'm in this really lucky place because we have space and we're in the Bay. And if you have space, you have fucking gold. And if you're not using the gold and spreading it out and saying, I got some, you get some, you get some, and, very much like a house party vibe for me is like, who the fuck wants to have a house party with 4 people? That's not a house party. That's a dinner party or snacks or some shit. I'm into the city being represented on our stages. And I think that we have to use, we could call them tactics, strategies, instincts that are the same way that you would chop it up with someone on the street that you didn't know, or someone you were trying to chat at the park, or someone that you find a momentary similar interest at a cafe or whatever. So I say all that to say, I think in a certain regard, we just have to break the fucking structure down and be like, fuck a subscription, you know what I'm saying? Like, fuck an ad on the fucking Muni. Fuck the bullshit ass fucking Chronicle, which is a fake ass real estate, empire. That's all it is. It's selling fucking ads for Hawaii and Reno and telling everyone in the city sucks now. Get the fuck out of here so we can buy it out from. I'm just like, fuck the dumb shit. I'm going straight to people that I know and just say, hey, you want to come to this? So that's my long way. And I know I sound angry. I'm actually not angry at all because I believe in the power of the people. I believe that we are never going away. Like, they're never going to steal it from us, And so if we remember that, the power of the people part, and I say that in a direct, practical way, make an invitation. Make it something welcoming for people, because I admire where everyone is shifting the actual paradigms of what we're doing and then shaking up the capitalist structure of it. I'm too impatient for that in a certain regard, and I'm also really desirous of being around people. So I'm much more into the first step. Let's just get everyone in the space, and then everyone to realize that, oh, we're all in the space together. Oh, I guess we're all in the city together. I guess we're all in the Bay together. All in the state together. We're all in the world together. One love type of vibe. And then it just starts to open up your minds, because a lot of it is the work that, like what Tommy does. Like, I went to public school in San Francisco. You think that there was someone like Tommy that came to my school and sat in the thing and said, hey, dig this philosophy about binary thinking? You know what I mean? So, like, we have to be so thorough about it, but also I think there's a real direct way, as long as it's in concert with something that, like Maria is talking about. It's like, let's take the top, and then let's get the rest of us right at the door to say, like, I'm going to open the door and everyone is allowed in, because there has to be this really instinctive moment and really direct moment where you just go, like, it's just a space and you're welcome to it. And you can dig it, and you can enjoy it. Because if we don't get to that thing, then we're going to call it art and entertainment and high art. and we're going to call it downtown shit. And no one's ever going to be like, oh yeah, the most populist fucking shit, like live entertainment, anyone can do, anyone can respond to, anyone can create, and we all vibe on it. Then they'll keep doing the Bezos fucking fake, algorithm thing, and then we'll play sheep to it.
Can I add to that? I just love what you're saying, Sean, and it's so right. I feel like the one thing that we need to have a correct picture of is in terms of breaking things down and letting people in, is understanding how the structure of Hollywood works and how powerful it is. I mean, unbelievably powerful, protected because it influences geopolitics. And when you start to think about how incredibly influential our entertainment media is, you begin to understand why Hollywood executives in those huge institutions, the Directors Guild, unions, the agencies, the studios, the networks, why they're the Academy, why they're so protective. And they're so entrenched with news media and with Washington, D.C. And I love taking example of, for example, Steven Spielberg. He is, a member of the Directors Guild, a member of the Producers Guild, the Writers Guild. He's a member of the Academy of Motion Pictures. He owns a studio, DreamWorks. He's a major donor to Washington, D.C. He's huge in the news media, and he's a giant in the giant of all and of talent agencies in the world, Creative Artists Agency. He's like an industry of his own. So you take a person like him and think about the influence of that, and then multiply that by not that many people. Those are the people who are controlling the media, whether who can come in and who can't come in, and what can be done, and exactly, things are getting so centralized. Bezos, exactly, it's, the social media. I mean, it's really, really appalling. And that's, I think, what we need to kind of, break apart. We need to figure out how to not allow these organizations, a Netflix or a Facebook or an Amazon, to have the kind of power that they do. And we do need to allow for greater democratization of entertainment media and media. We do need to open it up to all voices. I really believe it's like, I would rather hear the hate voices than know that we were suppressing voices. I think that it's free speech, and bring in as many voices as we can and open it all up.
Yep. I say one more thing that made me think about how people doing what we're doing, we know it's a game, and the work that we do is really riding that line of playing the game, but also like, we're not playing your fucking game. We ain't playing with nobody. You know what I mean? It's so, I think the more of these discussions happens, I feel like I have a whole new group of, do I use the word comrades? uh, of folks that I know are thinking in the same way, that I know that are gonna try to be at the table so that they can break that fucking table, not so that they can be at it. Uh, they are also, and we also know that we are going to be the ones that it's going to take a very long time, but we're going to knock down all of that stuff. And like you said, Maria, like we just get in on the merit of our work and what we do, and more voices will be seen. But we're the ones that are like not going by the rules, and we're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. But yeah, it's going to take a while, but we're going to get there.
I just kind of want to add to that, and I forget who mentioned, Sean, who said, make this welcoming, make that invitation, which I really love how you frame that. But also just leave that door open for someone behind you, because, I'm here because all the people that have come before me, who have fought and maybe lost and fought, have won, and have all, and their names don't get mentioned these days, maybe because they just was, they were ahead of their time. And so I think wherever you can, I try to remember, like, let's not feed into the scarcity mindset, that there can be only one of us or only a few of us, and that I need to shut the door because then that way, like, I can benefit from, you know, whatever is like trendy right now to support. Instead, be like, all of us can win if we all support each other, because if we fight and are selfish for just a singular, for us, it's like the democracy, like we're gonna lose if we're only just focused on ourselves. But we all realize like, hey, it requires collective action to make big changes. And so just remember that, and please leave the door open for somebody else.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, again, so many thoughts. So I might just spew them all out and see which one you want to pick up and go. But, you know, certainly Maria, you know, Maria and I feel like we're in a very small crew of folk who really do see the entertainment industry as it's employment, it's workers, and where law and legislation and just enforcement of the laws that already exist needs to come into effect. And it's really hard to get that angle. And so I agree that that part needs to happen. I thought about this recently with, it's just the employment discrimination versus representation issue, right? And so somehow the language has changed to be of representation rather than of workers who are of many different demographics getting jobs, right? And being discriminated against in that work, that now it becomes about, well, do I see myself on screen? And the danger of having it as representation and not employment discrimination, as then it means people can just curate whatever they want and discriminate against whomever they want. And then even when they talk about representation, this I thought was also a really cool rhetorical move, was to change the rhetoric of representation and employment discrimination based on entertainment hubs, right? Like LA and New York, which are more than 50% people of color, more than 50% BIPOC, obviously 50% female. But now whether we've achieved, because I heard this in the language of we've achieved representation, I think it was with Black people, wasn't it? This last circuit, like we've achieved representation. We should all be so happy, as like, except that if you're hiring out of LA and New York, you're not anywhere close to that, but we've managed to make it the US. And it's like, but if we're talking about just representation, knowing that our tentpole films go around the world, then why aren't we using the world's demographics as our measure, which again are more than 50% BIPOC? So wouldn't that mean we're still short given all of the world? So I just find it really interesting, these rhetorical moves and the way that certain ideas like Maria's certainly have been squashed as well as others. So I'm going to just throw that out there. I wanted also to go back to Sean talking about power of the people, right? And how that is such a power and so important. It's something that I think of, I was thinking of when I was working on The Light Ahead with Naomi, and always thinking about it, which is we are talking right now about the great devastation to the planet, and how we can't do anything unless these fossil fuel companies do something different. But if all of us stop buying stuff we didn't need, they wouldn't have anything to produce anymore. So they wouldn't be able to rob the earth of its resources if we just as a species and as the people who are consumers just stop doing that. And I feel like it is all tied, like, oh, anyway, like I said, I got a lot of ideas. I'm just throwing out bundles of ideas for you to pick up wherever you want. And in part in that too, I've always wanted with Hollywood films, especially, but for any production, to also put its carbon footprint as part of what it's required to put at the end. I've been really trying to make sure my home is 100% renewable. You know, I have an EV that I charge at home too. I'm like trying to stay in that way. And so when I do produce things, I don't buy anything new. I just repurpose what I have. I do all that stuff so I can mostly say that it's been 100% renewable or zero carbon footprint, yada, yada, not zero. But I've also wondered with that too. So I'm throwing a lot of stuff out. Anyone want to pick up any of those? Cidney, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're with the fossil fuels and sustainability, I care deeply as well, and I think about this a lot, how like entertainment, the media, we generate wish fulfillment, we generate sort of the desires, right, of what people aspire to, and right now it's very capitalist driven, right? It's always about like, oh, you need this thing to compete, like you need to buy this thing to be happy, you need to look this way to be happy. And what if when you're telling your stories, when you're making art and putting more stuff out there, that you reframe, like Naomi does with her podcast, of like what the world could be if we didn't aspire to these very materialistic gains to make ourselves happy, and there was another way to sort of find fulfillment, and that is compatible with preserving our planet.
I'm interested in what you were touching on there too about representation. And as we were saying that 80% of the entertainment media distributed around the world comes from Hollywood, you know, the issues I think one of the most important things we have to do is to begin to solve the problems of the world is to, for our country, for us, is to end our US centrism. You know, Hollywood is very savvy about you know, how they can get their entertainment media, you know, out all around the world, but we really don't think about the rest of the world particularly, and the makeup of the United States and the issues of identity politics in the United States are not the same as the issues in the rest of the world. You know, we've got China, which is a vast majority Asian people, India, vast majority Asian people, South America and Central America, you vast majority Latino people, and Africa, vast majority Black. You know, it doesn't look in the rest of the world the way it looks, as you were saying, Kathleen. And I think that it's really important, and also ideology. And I just think if the United States would kind of begin to stop thinking in such a US-centric way about the world, you know, we could begin to bring the world together more and represent and get the, you know, the media from the rest of the world and see what the rest of the world is saying and bring us all together in the hope of sustainability.
And before pigs fly. It's gotta happen before pigs fly.
Well, building off the before pigs fly thing, and also what you said about representation, about like, we did representation, we're done, it's really important to keep in mind the long view of how this fight has played out in media as well in the US. And my stats are for Hollywood, and so much of my learning on this came from Maria and her amazing work. But of just looking, every time there's a big conversation about representation in media, just like we've had over the last 5 years, there's sort of this feeling of everyone at the top of Hollywood going, oh, well, we just didn't know. Like, nobody told us. We didn't realize we weren't hiring women and people of color. Sorry. We'll fix it. We'll get right on that. But that happens every time. And everyone's like, oh, they just didn't know. They just didn't know. Now they know they're going to fix it. But it's really important to recognize that their stance is really, what do we have to do and how long do we have to do it to get people to stop yelling at us before they get tired of talking about this and look elsewhere? Because if you look at just the stats over time, it's like there'll be a thing like this once in a generation, right? Big conversation. They'll be like, oh my God, we didn't know. The stats will go up, and then everybody looks and everybody goes, oh, we did representation, great. And then they look away and the stats go down. They generally don't go down to what they were before that happened, but they go down. And then they flatline for a generation. And then it happens again. And they go, oh, we didn't know. So what's really important, what I'm worried about in this moment is that we are tired of having this conversation, right? We're all tired of having panels about this. And we're tired of having to think about this because there's a lot of other things happening, including a pandemic. So like, but we've got the boat rocking this much, right? And if at this moment we go, the numbers are moving, it'll probably be fine. It won't be fine, right? That's when the boat will stabilize and the system will reassert itself. So this is the point that we have to start pushing even harder, because we've got it moving, but we can't look away and we can't stop just because we're tired, which we all are.
Well, and it's all about the money, isn't it? I mean, the efforts that we made for, women in Hollywood, which, largely resulted also in Me Too. What did Hollywood do? They just, shift things around. It's about financial ecosystems. Where is the money? It's like I often say, what we did in Hollywood was like taking a helicopter of chum and dropping it on the lee side of a reef, and all the life moved over there. Oh, here's the money. Oh, here's the money. And that's just what people do. They just shift around looking for, the resources. And we have to be aware of that too.
Yes, to all things so amazing. I am going to have to watch this recording over and over again, just to go back over so many of these brilliant things that you said. We're going to wrap up pretty soon, but is there anything anyone wants to say that they have not said Now is the time.
I want to chime in
Uh,
just sort of along, along the question of representation and this idea of things shifting back and forth. And I think, as many people have expressed, that money is such a central component of it. And it's one thing, I think, to look at representation in terms of gender or race or sexuality. But I think if the very notion that art is a business, or artists, or the business is the primary thing, is not really challenged or changed, if there aren't voices coming in that challenge that, if there aren't more working class perspectives, which are virtually non-existent and not really talked about in the discussion of representation, if there aren't other perspectives beyond gender or sexuality or race, or that, being considered a marker of difference, I think that's part of the self-perpetuating problem. If money continues to be the primary driver, then that'll be the primary concern, and that'll often result in the most conservative decisions by those who have the power at the moment.
For sure. I think it goes to what Kathleen mentioned, the difference between representation and work. Like, I think people who aren't living paycheck to paycheck don't realize like how important it is to get work, right? And when you're working class, or you're, from an immigrant family like I am, it's like work is so critical to survival. And so when you stop me from getting work, it's actually stopping me from living, versus like, I think Hollywood is kind of this like industry built on like, oh, you want of dreams, and like, you want to be here, so you need to like do these X amount of things, and if you can't afford to be here, you can go somewhere else. And I 100% agree, we need to factor in money into that perspective as well.
So truly, Cidney, one of the most interesting things on the horizon right now is the argument about women's unpaid labor around the world. I can't remember what the number was, Kathleen, maybe you remember, but it was like, 1.9, or I forget what it was, 19 trillion. Anyway, it's like $1.9 trillion of lost money that women around the world don't make, because I think that the idea of universal income is probably something we should really consider. Would empower everybody a little bit. People just need a little bit to do extraordinary things.
Yeah, what you said, Maria, just made me think about how, sorry, but
okay.
how vital it is, I think, for the arts industry, for those who are concerned about these things, to be aligned with larger movements for workers' rights or women's rights all over the world in all sorts of fields. I think there's often a specialness that we use to describe the arts or artists as these sort of protected classes. And if there is more emphasis on broader solidarity and this being part of a larger movement to shift these power structures that affect the industry, but also affect many other people in many different ways, I think that's another way that we can change the conversation and affect more lasting changes.
It's a disgrace how this country does not support people in the arts, and extraordinary change could happen if people in the arts in all classes of people were supported. It's just appalling.
Yeah, it brings us back to this whole conversation, right? The arts are so pivotal in shaping point of view, which then shapes everything about how we treat each other and how the world is evolving and all of those types of things. And so those opportunities are absolutely pivotal. I want to thank you all, Tommy Soulati Shepherd, Sean San José, Naomi McDougall Jones, Cidney Hue, Maria Giese, and Rotimi Agbabiaka for this fantastic conversation. Again, the recording will be made available and I will be watching many, many, many times. But before we part, I want to share a bit about this year's Getting Played Equity Award recipient who unfortunately could not be with us today. It's the Coalition of Black Women Professional Theater Makers in the Bay Area in California. It's a group that formed in 2017 in response to Marin Theater Company's production of Thomas and Sally, which by romantically portraying Thomas Jefferson's relationship with Sarah Sally Hemings, a Black child Jefferson enslaved who bore his offspring, offended as an irresponsible, deeply harmful project with no accountability to Black women and girls. The coalition organized a collective response and call to action for Marin Theater Company and for the national theater community as consequence of many years of watching stories of Black women and girls be misrepresented, censored, appropriated, and exploited. The coalition recognized in its online letter that you may read after the symposium that people of color across the country continue to face these issues. The coalition also recognized allied communities in this intersectional struggle for equity and representation on stage, particularly when these representations have real world consequences. The coalition's labor was ongoing for several years and continues to resonate as an example of what the Getting Played Equity Award strives to celebrate: courage to advance equity in the entertainment industry through pivotal actions, typically less visible and pedestaled, but nevertheless foundational to positive change. So go out there, be the change, nominate your most honored contributors for next year's Getting Played Equity Award, and we will see you in 2023. Thank you for coming.